All right, it's time to talk BYU sports again, and maybe it's because we're still on a Super Bowl high or National Signing Day was this week, but football is on the mind. Quick thoughts on the Super Bowl, Josh, and what it means for a hungry Eagles fan base?
Hey, fly Eagles, fly! That was a great game. Enjoyed it. For once the game was better than the commercials. So I'll
True.
take a good football game any day of the week.
Man, yep, my thoughts are the same. Congrats to the Eagles organization. Check out our story on the Daily Universe on our website. Check out more reactions from Cougars with ties to Philly. All right, in other football news, National Signing Day was Wednesday, rounding out the official list of Cougars joining BYU football this year. More on that later as we break down the big names and what BYU football's future is looking like.
Men's basketball lost 2 games in a row for the first time this season, falling to Loyola Marymount and Gonzaga, both on the road. So currently, the Cougars are tied for third in the WCC with Pacific, and they'll return to the Marriott Center this week to take on Santa Clara and San Francisco.
Just some quick thoughts on BYU basketball. I wish we had better news, some more positive things to talk about. But at this point, the at-large bid is not looking so good for the Cougars. And, as Josh and I were talking about earlier, it's Vegas or bust for these guys. So hopefully we'll be back next week, looking at the Cougars' chances of maybe going on a run in that tournament. Women's hoops, on the other hand, beat LMU, but also lost to Gonzaga in the Marriott Center. They are now tied with St. Mary's for second in the conference and hit the road for games against Santa Clara and San Francisco this week. Number 7 men's volleyball played UC Santa Barbara last week, getting swept on Friday and then sweeping the same team the following night on Saturday. They stay on the road to take on UC San Diego and number 14 USC this week. Gabby Garcia-Fernandez has been a monster, leading the team in kills as a freshman, and also earned his second off-the-block Freshman of the Week award.
And number 19, BYU Softball begins its season on the road this week, playing in the Kajikawa Classic in Arizona against teams such as Stanford and Nebraska. Check out our season preview online for more info on this year's team. The baseball team also begins play this month, hitting the road at Hawaii and Auburn before returning to Provo in March. The Cougars are favored to win the WCC again this year after being voted number 1 in the preseason poll, with 3 players on the All-WCC preseason team.
Number 21, BYU Gymnastics lost just their second meet of the season in Denver and returned to Utah to compete against in-state rival Southern Utah on Friday. All right, so we've kind of ignored football up until now on this podcast, but with spring ball coming up next month and some big signings this week, let's take a second to evaluate what BYU football is looking like right now. So, looking over some of the additions that were made not only today in a National Signing Day, but also previously in the early signing period back in December. Who are some of the biggest names for you, Josh?
Yeah, looking over the list here from today, obviously Gunnar Romney, 4-star recruit out of Arizona, one of the top recruits in the state. Definitely a huge get for the Cougars, and definitely is starting to help fill in that hole that they had for the past little bit at wide receiver.
Right.
So definitely like for him to be someone who's looking to make an immediate impact with that. And kind of the surprise of the day was Danny Jones, the punter out of Australia. So cool to see the Cougars again reaching out internationally, looking for different players, and just looking over the overall list. A lot of linemen, a lot of solid spots, and some more quarterbacks on the list. There was Zach Wilson, 3-star recruit out of Corner Canyon here in the state, and Stacey Connor, also a 3-star recruit out of Texas. So a lot of competition there. Gets me excited for spring ball because it's been a while since BYU has come into spring ball not knowing, it's so and so's turn to just take over the offense. It's kind of just been handed down, quarterback from quarterback for the past few years, and so good to see that competition, and hopefully that'll help us improve the offense and find that spark.
No, yeah, for sure. That's definitely got to be one of the biggest storylines heading into spring ball, and about the quarterback situation there. Also, with BYU, we know quite a few of these signees will be heading on missions before we ever see them take the field in a BYU uniform. It's kind of cool to see Kalani go all the way down through the list of these new signees, and he knew exactly who was already in classes, who's going to be joining them in the fall, who's going on missions. It's just really cool to see, how he really does know each and every one of these guys, and I think he has a really personal connection with all of them. It's something that we've seen across the board with the coaching staff. With Coach Grimes as well. One of his big priorities was just getting to know the players as soon as he got here. Obviously he's not LDS and maybe not as familiar with the BYU system, but his attitude coming in, just wanting to be the best coach and best mentor he could be. I think that's something we've seen across the board with the coaches. So that's really interesting to see. So just some of the names that stuck out to me. Some athletic defensive backs in Malik Moore and also Isaiah Heron out of Las Vegas. The coaches both mentioned them in the press conference as being, just really guys that can come in right away and make an impact on that side of the ball, on that side of the field, on defense. And then also, you mentioned, Zach Wilson, quarterback out of Corner Canyon. In that same early signing period, we got a quarterback out of Texas, Stacey Connor, tall, athletic guy. I'm really excited about him. I'm all in on Stacey Connor. Obviously, he's probably not going to be the BYU starting quarterback come September, but I think he has a lot of potential. We're kind of seeing the football scene, not only in the NFL but also in college football, going in that direction of more athletic quarterbacks, dual threat kind of guys that can run it but also have a solid arm. So watch out for him, Stacey Connor, as we get into spring ball. I think he'll have a good chance to make some noise maybe there with among the other quarterbacks.
Yeah, and one more that stuck out from today, Dallin Holker out of Lehigh, 6'5" tight end, 222. Got to see him a couple times out of Lehigh, and really reminded me of kind of that combo of Johnny Harline or an Andrew George, Dennis Pitta. Just a lot of size, good hands, able to hold on to the ball, get upfield really quick. And that was kind of one of the storylines heading into last season for football.
Right.
Was, can we get the tight ends more involved, go back to that offense? And so I feel that with this wide receiver core coming in, that will improve that position. If they can then use that to open up the tight ends and have that, do we go in, do we go out, have all those options to give one of these, quarterbacks, whoever ends up taking the reins come September, that could be a really potent offense. So excited.
Definitely, and we've got Matt Bushman coming back off a really good freshman year. He's probably one of the
For sure.
More notable guys from a pretty sad season overall. He earned a bunch of all freshman team honors, so we'll add him to that list as well. And then looking, I think they mentioned that Holker is going to be heading off on a mission this year. I believe he was one of the ones on that list. But we also have some guys coming back from missions. One cool thing that Coach Sitake mentioned was that, a lot of the guys that he recruited when he first came to BYU 2 years ago are finally getting off their missions now. So we've got, guys like Jaron Hall, KJ Hall's brother. He's a quarterback. He'll be coming off his mission, as well as Gunnar Romney's brother, Baylor Romney. So those are just two more names to add to an already very crowded group of quarterbacks. But it is really cool to see, the full effect of Kalani's recruitment, finally coming into play. So, on that note, maybe we can just talk a little bit more about this coaching staff, some of the additions they've made over the past few weeks. What's the kind of the direction you see this coaching staff going in, Josh?
Yeah, I definitely think that the changes were good ones. I wouldn't say necessarily needed, but things had to change.
Right.
So the shakeup, I think, is good. It puts the focus on football and winning. All the coaches that have just come in and those that remain from last season. Everyone knows, hey, you got to win. Like if you come this year and you lay a goose egg, we're gonna have problems for just looking ahead with the tough schedules, recruiting, everything just kind of it just stacks on itself. And so this is to me kind of a make or break season to get ready, show that put to rest all those is independence sustainable, or you just got to go win games. And you've got a tough schedule, a lot of Power 5 games on the road this year. That's kind of the thing that stands out to me is the home games are kind of a lighter fare, and you got to go on the road to get some tough wins this year. So with that, I'm excited for Grimes. He definitely came in today at the National Signing Day press conference just with that attitude of We're here to win. We've got athletic kids. We're going to put them to work. We just need to make this work and get going. So I like the energy. Last year was more of, Sitake's here. He brings back that fun, that energy to the program.
Right.
But I feel now you take that excitement, but then you add a bit of seriousness. Like, hey, it's time to win. We got to get to work.
No, definitely. I think I would agree with like the one word that you used, just this attitude, that we've seen. There was no complacency. I know that you last year maybe were not the biggest fan of Ben Cahoon as wide receivers coach. We see Fesi Sitake, filling in that role, and he was an offensive coordinator up at Weber State, a team that did really well this past year. And all these coaches are just guys who are hungry. They want to get better. They're not just satisfied with being assistants on a BYU coaching staff, which is honestly some of the things we've been seeing the past couple of years. Just these guys who feel like maybe they've kind of made it, Whereas with these coaches, I don't think they believe this is their ceiling for any one of them. With Jeff Grimes, he was an offensive line coach last year, and now he's an offensive coordinator. Maybe someday he'll want to be a head coach of his own team. So I think it's just a bunch of guys who are serious, like you mentioned, and really, have the drive to get better. Which, obviously after a 4-9 season, you have to get better. So that should be a given thing. But I think, more than any other time since I've been watching BYU football, there's, some real drive to not settle for anything less than the best. Speaking of, that schedule that you mentioned, quite a few difficult away games. BYU starts out with 4 of their first 5 on the road against Power 5 conference teams. So how's this outlook for the 2018 season look, in your opinion, Josh?
Like I said, those road games are tough, right? So the Cougars opened at Arizona. You've got a trip to Wisconsin, which will be brutal, at Washington, and then head up to Boise in November, followed by a road trip out at UMass. They're at Gillette Stadium, Foxborough. And then you end the season up in Salt Lake against Utah. So that is the, every year that's just always seems to be the storyline, right? It's a hard schedule.
Right.
You got to be independent. You got to go make a name. But I feel like this is, kind of that point where all those contracts, the back end, where we've got, is the 2-for-1, the 3-for-1 deals all kind of lined up, unfortunately, for this BYU team. So they've got quite the difficult road slate. Obviously, they're all winnable. If you prepare, if you know what you're looking for, some of those are going to be really tough. Overall, I would hope for a 7-5. You got to win at home. Your home slate is not as impressive, to put it nicely.
Right.
You open with Cal on September 8th, but then your home games are McNeese State, Utah State, Hawaii, Northern Illinois, and New Mexico State. So a lot of winnable games in that group, and obviously some spots that you could trip up, because we saw UMass last year. So I'd want to see BYU get to at least 7-5. Kind of 6-6 is kind of the number thrown out there. That road slate,
Right.
really intimidating. Home slate should be winnable. So I can see where that's coming from. I think they can get at least one, and I'd think about that Arizona one, just the opener, as the best chance for BYU to go get a road win. But yeah, let's get back to a bowl game, get things going in the right direction, and then 2019 got an awesome schedule, and really that's the moment you can come back and make your presence known on the national scene, or you let it slide, and that could be problematic come down the road.
Right. Who's the starting quarterback for BYU in game 1 of this season for you?
Oh my goodness. You almost have to use both hands to figure out just who is in the running for the position. I think a lot of it comes down to Tanner Mangum, obviously the senior, would be the default go-to. I just really want to see how his Achilles heals completely, and then how, if anything, if that affects his mechanics. When he had his first foot injury, I remember John Beck was on the radio, and he talked about how just that foot injury messes up everything. It messes up your balance. When you step to throw, you start to overcompensate with more arm strength. You start to lean back. Put a little more air under the ball. So a lot of things can be different when you're recovering from a lower body, especially a foot injury for a quarterback. So if he can come back and just be solid physically, and then mentally just take control of the team, run the offense like he knows. He's been in the system now a couple of years. It's his time to shine. And if not, I honestly don't know if I could give you a name. Any one of those quarterbacks could come back from a mission, could come in from high school and really make their name known. And, I think overall, it's good for the team, right? It's going to push that competition. It's going to push the coaching staff to make that call, like who is the best person for the job right now based on spring and then later fall camp.
Yeah, and I think, they haven't announced whether Tanner's going to be ready for spring ball. I would probably lean towards no, just because of the severity of his injury. So I really, one tough thing about this offseason, the changes that we're going through, I don't think we're going to see, exactly how good this BYU team is until the season actually begins. Obviously, that's how it is usually, but I think even more so this year, with so many variables and so many changes as far as the staff goes and their style of play. I think we'll be able to understand a lot of how the team works, during spring ball and stuff. But putting that into a real game would be a whole different thing. So I would agree with you. I think Tanner's probably gonna be our starting guy come the first game of the season, but. Kalani's mentioned many times that he's going to go with the guy who wants it the most, the guy that proves himself in practices and spring ball and in fall training camp. And so, it could be any number of these several, almost a dozen guys that we've mentioned. So, stay tuned for that. We'll obviously keep you guys updated as we learn anything more about, Tanner or these guys who are coming off missions. Next up, we've got some thoughts from the coaching staff on this new recruiting class and how the offseason has gone in their opinion.
So first of all, what are you just most excited about with this year's signing class? What are some of the highlights, some of the things that you're just really pumped about with these guys?
Well, I think first we got the right kind of kids. I think we got the guys that'll be a good fit here, and not just a good fit at BYU. That's spoken about a lot, and that's spoken about by a lot of colleges. But I think the kind of guys that will add something to our program beyond their ability on the field, guys who are tough, who are hardworking, and have the right kind of intangibles. And then I think we did a nice job. Two things. I think we did a nice job balancing the offensive class, given that we've got at least one or two guys at every position.
Right.
I think we did a nice job of recruiting numbers in the offensive line, and you've got to restock that position and continue to build it every year. If you don't, you'll find yourself without enough good big bodies.
Right. And this morning we saw that Tanner McKee out from California, chose to go to Stanford. How hard is it for you guys at BYU to kind of see top LDS products like Tanner, maybe get away from BYU? Or I don't know if you guys see it like that, but what's that kind of like for you guys?
We're excited about the guys that signed with BYU.
Good answer. And then as far as being an independent program, what freedoms or restrictions come with that as far as recruiting goes?
An independent program?
Right, as in not in part of a conference, a Power 5 or...
I don't think it necessarily gives us any restrictions. I think our schedule gives us an opportunity to compete at the highest level.
Right.
And so because of that, we better go recruit great players, and I think great players want that kind of competitive experience.
Gotcha. And where do you think we'll see the most change and improvement from last year to this year as far as players go? And what aspect of the team maybe you think will have the biggest jump?
I can't really answer that, and if I could, I'm not sure that I would want to. We're going to talk about what's happening moving forward rather than make any comparisons to what's taken place in the past. And I've told our offensive players countless times, we really haven't even spent very much time at all watching film from the past. What we're concerned about is where we're going moving forward.
Awesome.
I think we'll put together a fun offense to watch and a bunch of guys who want to play the game the right way.
I know that you weren't here obviously last year, so I'm sure that might have been maybe a tougher question for you, but and I've noticed a big focus for some of these new coaches coming in, especially for you as well, is just getting to know the new players, sitting down, helping them really reach their potential on and off the field. Where did that focus come from, and how do you kind of see that reflected in this year's team?
Well, I think if you're in coaching for the right reasons, you're in it to build relationships and make an impact on someone else's life. You're not just trying to win football games. And if that's the case, and that's truly part of your motivation for being in the game, then building relationships with the players and getting to know those guys is just part of what you do on a daily basis. Now, having said that, I think there's an obvious advantage to the fact that if you have a stronger relationship with your players, then they'll play better for you, and they'll begin to play together as a group more when they sense the camaraderie and the chemistry within our staff and within our offensive group, our unit.
Can you tell us the background of the Australian punter that you signed, how you guys found him, and that sort of thing?
Sure. He, like a lot of Australian rules football players that have an interest in playing American football, they sign up to be trained by a group called Pro Kick Australia. And so I went over there right after the last game of the season and visited with Pro Kick Australia and watched some of their training sessions. At that time there were several guys that we were interested in, but one of the things these guys do a really nice job of is matching up the right prospect with the right school. And so they felt like Danny, being a little older guy that's been more mature, he's been out work, he's been playing professional Aussie rules football, that he would be a good match for BYU and the honor code, and would be able to come in and buy into his view of the honor code would be the professionalism, and that was the attraction for him, and of course the academic reputation of BYU. So it was a good fit there, and at that point we brought him over here to make sure that he saw the place and that it was a good fit from his perspective. He will be primarily a rugby-style kicker or rollout-style kicker. He can play other positions, but he's very raw. He'll be one of the better athletes on our team, one of the biggest, fastest, strongest guys on our team. And he was still very much a prospect to attain the highest level of Aussie rules. And in fact, one of the things he shared with Coach Sitake and I at dinner one night was that his dad was disappointed that he was not chasing the Aussie rules football dream. But he's one of these guys in Australia, and American culture, he really follows it, and American football follows it. And it's a dream come true for him to be here.
How many of your current class are sign and send guys? Do you have a number on that?
What was that?
Sign and send guys that are leaving immediately for missions.
Oh gosh, good question. I think last time we looked at it, I can call it count right now. I think we have one of the linemen that's coming here right away. We'll have Braden Cosper and Gunnar Romney coming to school right away, and then Stacy Connor and Zach Wilson are already here. So out of the linemen, Jacob Smith is enrolling this fall. Stacy Connor and Zach Wilson are already in school and will be participating in spring ball. Dallin Hooker will go on a mission. Bento Upuotu will go on a mission. Braden Cosper and Gunnar Romney will be playing this fall. Amonefi now will be this fall. He's already returned missionary. Chinonso is going to be enrolled this fall. Isaac Matua is going on a mission. Oliver Nasilai is going on a mission. Alex Muscala is enrollee this fall. Viliami Tausinga is going on a mission. Talon Alfrey is going on a mission. Brock Davis enrolling this fall. Isaiah Heron and Malik Moore will enroll this fall, and same with Danny Jones. So.
Thanks. Kalani, this is your third recruiting class, and along with the state of Utah, has there been other areas of the country that you feel have posed a lot of opportunities to find talent into your program?
Well, I think I said it a couple years ago that we want to search the world. I think that with technology, you can look at a lot of different people. So I think Chinonso came from Nigeria and his connection, his background. So there's a lot of guys from different places, and obviously we sent Ed Lamb all the way to Australia. So for us, we need to take care of our priority will be the LDS athlete first, but there's a lot of LDS athletes all over the world, and I think there's a lot of great players that are the potential players that can be recruited by us. So whether we sign them to a scholarship or bring them on as preferred walk-ons, I think we need to put work into getting guys, getting guys recognized and trying to get them here and sell them on BYU and connect them with the school. And so we're going to make it an effort to recruit signees, but then also make an effort to make sure that the rest of the roster with preferred walk-ons will match what we want, and then try to get us the type of talent that we need on this team. And that's you look at the long list of preferred walk-ons that have come through here and have gone on to be big-time professionals in the league. That's something that we need to carry on.
Well, that's it for this week, guys. Hopefully we'll have more positive news on basketball next week, as well as our predictions for this year's WCC tournament in Vegas. We'll see you later.